They called it Kevin's Gate, Costner's Last Stand, Hollywood's most expensive joke, a 3-hour Western with subtitles that became the highest-grossing Western of all time, won 7 Oscars, and changed Hollywood forever. And the real story? It's even more unbelievable than the movie itself. Buffalo stampedes triggered by cookies, trees spray-painted for autumn, a mile-long pipeline built just to grow corn, actors speaking the wrong gender, a wolf that attacked its trainer, and a director who invested $3 million of his own money. This isn't just filmmaking, it's obsession turned into legend. Stay till the end for the wildest behind-the-scenes facts they never told you about Dances with Wolves. Let's start with the most ridiculous thing you'll hear today. The most epic scene in Western cinema history was created using Oreo cookies. What you're watching is 3,500 real buffalo stampeding across South Dakota. No CGI, no special effects. This is 1989. Computer graphics couldn't create this even if they wanted to. But here's what the audience never knew. 2 domesticated buffalo named Mammoth and Cody were secret weapons. Mammoth belonged to rock legend Neil Young. Producer Jim Wilson explained Cody was obsessed with Oreo cookies. You could be 100 yards away, pull out an Oreo, and he'd take off like a bullet straight for you. That terrifying moment when a massive buffalo charges towards the fallen brave smiles a lot? That's Cody chasing an Oreo cookie. Wilson waved one cookie in Cody's face, Cody bolted after it, and 3,500 buffalo followed in a thundering stampede. The most expensive action sequence in Western history was directed by a snack food. But getting those cookies to work, that required orchestrating the largest animal stunt in film history. Producer Jim Wilson recalls, the truck begins herding the buffalo at 5 o'clock in the morning in hopes that they would be in position by 11. They deployed Wranglers, a helicopter, pickup trucks with mounted cameras, 7 film cameras, 24 bareback Native American riders, extras, horses, and animatronic buffaloes for the killing scenes. Here's the brutal reality, they got 1 take per day, and if they screwed it up, well, there's always plan B, wait for 3,500 buffalo to walk back. Because once those buffalo started running, they wouldn't stop for up to 10 miles. It took 2 weeks to film this single sequence using the largest privately owned buffalo herd in the world, belonging to South Dakota rancher Roy Hook. For close-up shots where buffalo had to appear wounded or dead, the production built a specially designed animatronic buffalo that could breathe and moved convincingly enough to fool audiences. Cost? $250,000 in 1989 money. Now, here's where it gets intensely personal. Kevin Costner didn't just direct this film, he bet his entire fortune on it. The initial budget was $15 million. It ran over. Studios panicked. Major financiers got cold feet. So Costner did something almost unheard of. He put in $3 million of his own money to complete the film. Think about that for a moment. This was 1989. Westerns were considered deader than disco. This was his directorial debut. He'd never directed anything before. He'd already spent 5 years developing this project, turning down massive roles in Dick Tracy, The Hunt for Red October, Bonfire of the Vanities, and Presumed Innocent. Hollywood insiders were literally calling it Kevin's Gate, mocking the infamous $40 million disaster Heaven's Gate that nearly destroyed United Artists in 1980. Critics were sharpening their knives. Everyone was waiting for Costner to fail spectacularly. So what happened? His $3 million personal investment made him $40 million in profit. The film grossed $424 million worldwide, becoming the highest-grossing Western in cinema history. It won 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. Not bad for a movie that was supposed to be his career suicide note. But rewind. How did this even get made? Because the journey to the screen was almost as brutal as the film itself. Author Michael Blake's manuscript was rejected by 30 different publishers. That's documented fact. But here's a twist. Blake originally wrote it as a screenplay. Kevin Costner, already a rising Hollywood star, tried to sell Blake's script to multiple studios, but Blake made the process nearly impossible. He kept arguing with studio representatives, refusing to compromise on his vision. Costner later admitted, "I really started to lose patience with him." Their friendship completely shattered. Blake moved to Arizona. He got a job washing dishes at a Chinese restaurant while finishing his manuscript. Then Costner read the completed novel. "It was the clearest idea for a movie that I'd ever read," Costner said. "Everything changed in that moment." Blake's story was finally picked up by Fawcett Books, the only publisher willing to take a chance on a 400-page Western novel from an unknown author. Even with a published novel generating interest, the project faced massive resistance. 3 prominent Hollywood directors were offered Dances with Wolves. All 3 turned it down flat. Their reasoning? A 3-hour Western with extensive subtitles about Native Americans showing them as human beings instead of savages? In 1990, when Westerns were box office poison? It was considered absolute madness, so Costner made a decision that shocked everyone. "Fine, I'll direct it myself." It would be his first time ever in the director's chair. No experience, no safety net, because if you're already betting your career, your reputation, your money, and 5 years of your life, why not throw in a complete directorial inexperience too? Go big or go home. Costner's obsession with detail reached its peak in the opening Civil War sequence. The scene was set in Tennessee, but filmed in South Dakota. He hand-drew a map of the exact meadow he wanted: a horseshoe-shaped creek, hills for the generals, a mansion built from scratch, and a cornfield behind it. And the spot had to be within 30 minutes of Pierre, South Dakota. Finding it was nearly impossible, but they did. Then came the final touch. The scene was set in autumn, yet they were shooting in July. So the crew spray-painted every tree to look like fall, hundreds of them. But wait, there's more. They needed a 6-day shoot, a cornfield in South Dakota, on dry, compacted soil where nothing grows easily. To get enough water, they had to secure a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers to build a mile-long water pipeline from the Missouri River just to irrigate the corn so it would grow tall enough by July of 1989. And then, right before filming, the crew went through the entire cornfield with weed killer to turn the green corn brown so it would look like a fall harvest. When your director is so obsessed with authenticity that you build infrastructure projects and commit agricultural murder, you know you're making either a masterpiece or a disaster. Fortunately, it was a masterpiece. When Costner finished filming and assembled his first cut, the film was 5.5 hours long. Studios nearly had heart attacks. The editing process became brutal, cutting beloved scenes, reshaping the entire narrative structure. The theater version came in at 3 hours, an extended cut released later just under 4 hours. When your short version is 3 hours long, you might have a slight editing problem, but somehow it worked. Money got so tight during the 2-month post-production process that the producers had to be creative. They held a literal garage sale. Props, costumes, set pieces, everything was sold off to raise funds to complete the film. Cast and crew members bought souvenirs, collectors snatched up Native American artifacts and cavalry uniforms. Now, those buffaloes weren't the only animals causing complete chaos on set. Two Socks, the wild wolf that befriends Lieutenant Dunbar, was played by 2 wolves named Buck and Teddy. They were promised as trained and docile, professional animal actors. During one critical running scene, one of the wolves suddenly bit the trainer in the leg. Production couldn't stop, so Kevin Costner had to step in personally. He ran with the wolf himself, throwing pieces of raw meat ahead to keep the animal distracted, and cooperated enough to get the footage. And when they needed the wolves to howl for certain scenes, Costner and producer Jim Wilson would stand off camera and howl themselves, trying to inspire their 4-legged actors to join in. Method directing, when you have to literally speak wolf to get the shot done.
Kevin and I never dreamt that part of our job description would be teaching a wolf how to howl.
But Costner's most audacious decision? Over a quarter of the film, more than 25% of the dialogue would be spoken in Lakota. In 1990, this was considered absolute career suicide. Studio executives were convinced American audiences would refuse to read subtitles. Costner didn't care. He wanted authenticity. But there was a massive problem. Hardly anyone still spoke Lakota fluently enough to translate an entire feature film screenplay. Costner found Doris Leader Charge, a 60-year-old Lakota language teacher. She translated it in just 3 weeks.
And he said, would you like to translate a script? And I said, I don't know about that because I've never ever seen one.
Leader Charge became the dialogue coach for the entire production, teaching actors who never had heard Lakota before how to speak it convincingly. But here's where it gets absolutely hilarious to native speakers. Lakota is a gendered language. Men and women use different words, pronunciations, and grammatical structures. Teaching this added complexity, so the gendered speech was cut from the instruction. The result? When the film premiered, Native American audiences who spoke Lakota were laughing. The fierce warriors, these intimidating, battle-hardened men, were technically speaking like women. Lakota activist Russell Means criticized this translation choice, saying it was like watching tough guys talk in Valley Girl accents. But the impact was undeniable. It was revolutionary. It changed how Hollywood thought about subtitles and languages. Speaking of the Lakota language, legendary actor Greene, who played the holy man Kicking Bird, had a confession when he got the role. Greene is Oneida. When producers told him that most of his dialogue would be in Lakota, his response was blunt. I don't speak that.
Was it a very difficult shoot?
Yes, with a capital Y, yes. Yeah, it was very difficult because we had to learn to speak Lakota, which is no easy feat, and learn to ride bareback, which is... I won't even go into that. It was very hard to learn that.
But Greene learned his Lakota lines so meticulously, practiced so obsessively, that his speaking in the film appeared completely effortless and utterly convincing. Even Lakota speakers believed he was fluent. That's not acting, that's linguistic sorcery. Greene is a wizard. To portray an aging holy man with arthritic posture and a shuffling, pained walk, Greene developed a unique technique. He put a slice of bologna in each moccasin before every take. The disgusting sensation of wet lunch meat squishing between his toes caused him to walk with an awkward, uncomfortable gait that perfectly captured an elderly man's physical struggles. For weeks of filming in the South Dakota heat, this Oscar-nominated actor walked around with rotting meat in his shoes. After the buffalo hunt, Win and his hair offers Dunbar a piece of raw buffalo liver as a sign of respect and brotherhood. It's one of the film's most visceral, unforgettable moments. Costner bites into it, blood dripping down his chin, chewing the raw organ meat, while maintaining eye contact with the Lakota warriors, watching to see if his white soldier has courage. Except it's not buffalo liver. It's not even meat. The props department created it using cranberry Jell-O, wobbly, blood red, and disgustingly convincing on camera. Costner's grimace of determination? That's pure acting. Or maybe it was just really bad Jell-O. Either way, he sold it. One of the film's most heartbreaking scenes shows a field littered with dead, skinned buffalo, the result of white-hide hunters massacring the animals and leaving the meat to rot. The sight is so realistic, so disturbing that when Native American actors rode over the ridge and saw it for the first time, they were visibly shocked. They were papier-mâché models, incredibly detailed, meticulously crafted fakes. The models looked so convincing that local residents driving past the filming location called the police multiple times, believing they were witnessing an actual poaching. Officers approached the set with guns drawn, ready to make arrests, until the crew showed them the artificial carcasses. When your fake dead animals are so realistic that you almost get arrested, your props department deserves an Oscar, which, by the way, they got Best Costumes. Kevin Costner's 6-year-old daughter Annie played young Stans with a fist in the traumatic flashback sequence where her pioneer family's massacred by Pawnee warriors. In the scene she runs desperately from the attackers, Costner directed her, "Look over your left shoulder as you run." But Annie was 6 years old. She didn't know her left from her right yet, so she looked both ways, just to make sure she got it right. The mistake stayed in the final film because it actually made her terror more real. And here's an even better detail. Later in the film, when John Dunbar's being pulled off of his horse and attacked by Lakota warriors who don't yet know he's friendly, you can hear a voice screaming in the background, "Leave him alone!" That's Annie Costner, off camera, genuinely terrified watching the stunt performers attack her daddy. The audio crew captured it and made it into the final sound mix. Sometimes the best performances in cinema aren't acting at all. Stands with a Fist was inspired by a real woman, Cynthia Ann Parker. In 1836, she was just 9. Comanche warriors raided her family's fort in Texas and took her captive. She lived among the Comanche for 24 years, married a warrior named Nakona, and had 3 children, including Quanah, the last great Comanche chief. When Texas Rangers rescued her in 1860, she didn't want to leave. She considered herself Comanche and tried to escape many times to return to her family. She never succeeded and died heartbroken in 1870. Her story also inspired The Searchers in 1956, another Western classic. One woman's tragedy, caught between 2 worlds, gave birth to 2 of the greatest Westerns ever made. So how did a 3-hour subtitled Western about Native Americans become a massive mainstream hit? Through absolutely brilliant marketing strategy. The advertising team created 2 completely different campaigns. For women, a sweeping epic romance between John Dunbar and Stands with a Fist, love against all odds. For men, buffalo hunts, Pawnee battles, cavalry action, Wild West adventure, gunfights. The frontier like you've never seen it. Same movie, completely different trailers. Targeted advertising before social media made it standard practice. This dual approach helped the film appeal to a far broader audience than typical Westerns, which traditionally skewed heavily male. They sold a Nicholas Sparks movie to wives and a Clint Eastwood movie to husbands. Everyone bought tickets. Marketing genius. For that elaborate opening Civil War battle sequence with spray-painted trees and murdered cornfield, producers needed hundreds of Union and Confederate soldiers. They hired around 250 actual Civil War reenactors. One participant, Jim Hatzel, got the job by mailing a photograph of himself wearing authentic cavalry clothing to Andy Cannon, the reenactment coordinator. But here's what made them invaluable. These weren't just extras showing up for a paycheck. They were obsessed historians who lived and breathed 1860s military culture. They saved Costner significant time and money by working swiftly and professionally, more efficiently than typical Hollywood extras. They also served as unofficial technical advisors, teaching Costner proper military stances, the correct way to salute in Civil War era, how cavalry uniforms should be worn, and period-accurate military protocol. They shot that entire elaborate Civil War sequence in just 6 days. Never underestimate the power of passionate amateurs. But here's a real impact that goes beyond box office numbers and Oscar gold. In 1985, only 87 Native American actors were registered with the Actors Guild. After Dances with Wolves premiered in 1990, that number exploded to 436 by 1993. The film employed over 30 Native American actors in significant, dignified roles. Cherokee actor Wes Studi, who played the fierce Pawnee warrior, called it a turning point for his entire career. "Many people still recognize me from Dances with Wolves," Studi says, even after appearing in nearly 100 subsequent film and television productions. It set a standard, followed by many films afterward that dared to look into what made Indians tick. No more wooden Indians. Non-native people got an inside look at us and how it must have been 200 years ago. Because of the film's respectful, authentic depiction of Lakota culture, the Sioux Nation adopted Kevin Costner as an honorary member. The film was nominated for 12 Academy Awards and won 7, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, Best Sound, and Best Original Score. It was the first Western to win Best Picture since Cimarron in 1931, almost 60 years later. John Barry's magnificent symphonic score became a personal favorite of Pope John Paul II. Barry won his 5th Oscar and 4th Grammy for the music. In 2007, the Library of Congress selected Dances with Wolves for preservation in the United States National Film Registry as being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. Despite earning over $424 million worldwide and becoming the highest-grossing Western in cinema history, the film never once topped the box office charts during its theatrical run. It didn't need it. It became #1 forever. Kevin Costner bet everything on a vision nobody believed in. He spoke a language nobody understood. He directed animals nobody could control. He built cornfields just to kill them. He made a Western in an era where Westerns were buried and forgotten. From a manuscript rejected 30 times to one of cinema's greatest triumphs, critics called it Kevin's Gate. History calls it cinema legend. Sometimes the impossible just takes a little longer, and maybe a few Oreo cookies. Keep watching, keep feeling, and never stop chasing the magic of cinema.